Hello everyone, welcome back to What Is This Weapon? And we have another mystery hardwood box for you here. We've done a few of these, usually indicative of an antique firearm, and yes, in this case that is true. There is a brass plaque in the lid that has nothing on it, unfortunately. Usual closures on the front, but let's get right to the business. It's not incredibly out of the ordinary, although it is a double-barreled pistol, which we'll return to. But right away, I want to show you what inspired me to choose this. I should say, actually, originally it would have been a pair. At some point, someone has put this quite nicely made hardwood block in there and sort of rigged it out as a case for a single pistol. But there would have been a pair. Certainly the case was built as a pair, and I don't think this is sort of gunmaker standard enough to have been refitted for one pistol. So I think that's happened in its service life, as it were. The reason of showing you this, and I'll show it to you, show it to camera, and then read. So this is one of these beautiful Victorian, early Victorian, trade labels. So Reilly, R-E-I-L-L-Y, that's Joseph Reilly, by the way. We're coming to him in a moment. Gunmaker, 2 words. These days it's typically 1. New Oxford Street, London, double and single rifles, pistols of every description, manufacturer of improved air guns and air canes, in itself interesting. And as is sometimes the case, there's a picture of his premises, rather nicely engraved. And then the line that really inspired me to show you this one. We have other firearms by Reilly, but this has the best label. It says at the bottom, large assortments, always ready for India and emigrants to all parts of the universe. And somebody actually alerted me to this trade label. Thank you, you know who you are. I hadn't spotted it myself, but I thought that was rather wonderful. So the use of the word universe in this Victorian time frame immediately makes me think H.G. Wells, something sci-fi going on there. Of course, he doesn't mean that. He means universe in the sense of the bits of it that we can access, i.e. Earth. But a really nice bit of wording. A nice, pristine label, actually. The case is a little bit tired, but that label is nicely intact. So we'll move that to one side. There's no particular backstory to that, or at least not that we know of. That's just his turn of phrase. It's commonly on his trade labels. We'll have a quick look at the gun, and then we'll tell you a bit about Reilly, because the choice of the word emigrants and all parts of the universe is actually somewhat relevant to his history. So the pistol that's still in here, it's in pretty good nick. Big bore, so .58 caliber or 20 bore, thereabouts. So it's a big kind of stopping pistol, as we might say. At a time when revolvers are in existence and becoming available, but have yet to become dominant. So rather than go for one of the newfangled revolvers, you might well go for a double-barreled, big-bore pistol like this. This is being marketed clearly to travellers, those going to different parts of the empire or beyond even, who might feel the need to defend themselves from animals or people or whatever. So it's not a howdah pistol. In fact, it's really we know what this is. It's a belt pistol because it has a belt hook on the side. So a bit like commonly sea service pistols in a military context will have this, but civilian pistols will as well. So you could in fact tool around with 2 of these things clipped to your belt. Spring of steel would work quite well, I think. It's a little bit loose on there. A lot of the finish is still there. So we have, not as it would have looked, but some colour case hardening. Hopefully we can pick that up for you with the camera. A bit like the cylinders on later revolvers, but they were doing it by this time. The usual nicely shaped, sort of dolphin-esque, but not actually picked out with eyes and things. Pair of hammers there. Lots of nice foliate engraving on, this is a box lock, so the side plates, the top plate. Bottom plate is not so engraved. Trigger guard is, that's nicely blued. We have a curved walnut grip, checkered, very precise, quite precisely checkered. A butt cap with a hinged patch box in there. realistically, probably a cap box more than a patch box, but you could put whatever you like in there. A couple of Skittles or something, not at this time. Jokes in the US military about storing Skittles in your butt trap. What else to say? Well, so there's a little bead, looks like a, I don't know if it's silver or what they call German silver, copper alloy, I think. Bead front sight on the top barrel, and a very sort of robust rear sight there. So you can see, hopefully, roughly how those line up. Really good sights for the time. Better, actually, than sort of belt or pocket pistols of later, well, not really belt anymore. Pocket pistols of later eras where the sights have to be very low profile so they don't snag. Better even than something like the first generation Colt 1911 sights, I would say, because you've got a nice wide notch. And that front sight fits, like the perspective at the end of my arm length anyway. It's probably not accurate, is it? Because we should be back here. Still, it fills that notch pretty well. And the contrasting colour of the front sight versus the steel rear works quite well. Now, the percussion system, of course, requires steel nipples to put a cap on each, in this case, and pull back the hammer. We've got a half cock position and a full cock. I think the mainspring, unfortunately, internally is fractured on the right-hand hammer. Otherwise, this is in, as I say, good condition. But we'll see that these nipples present as being equal height, but obviously the touch holes have to reach down to different heights because the right-hand top barrel needs to be shallower than the left-hand bottom barrel, but that's all done, pretty much all done internally. There's a slight difference. Yeah, okay, so there is a slight detectable difference with these screws. So if you remove the screws, I guess the vents are drilled behind those. Interesting. There is a nipple key in the kit. So this one is done like a turn screw or screwdriver. Some of them are more sort of T-shaped. I'm actually not sure that's, yeah, I think that's been put in there after the fact. Probably later manufacture as well, but you would want some sort of a nipple key in the original set. So that's how it would be with both cocked, of course, and then we have a left hand and a right hand trigger, which helps in knowing which barrel you're setting off, or which hammer you're dropping at least, I should say. We'll lower those back down. A rammer, of course, so captive, as is common by this time, well before this time, with a stirrup at the front, which catches the end of the rammer, and being a double barrel pistol allows you to ram a charge in the lower barrel, ram a charge in the top barrel, to essentially a preset depth as well, because you can't go any further in than that. So that would account for how much powder you're pouring in from your flask, which looks like it could be original. And then the bullet seated on top, of course. Probably have some, almost certainly patching the ball as well, so it doesn't roll out and you get a bit better of a gas seal. We have a lot of these slightly dusty looking lead balls in there, as in corrosive surface. We have to be careful around lead corrosion products. And there is a bag of the caps as well. So not entirely sure how much of this is original, because of course completely interchangeable, but they do appear to be period appropriate at least. So cap sits on the nipple, I won't press it home, and these nipples are actually grooved horizontally to grip the cap. And I've committed the cardinal sharp sin of leaving my rammer in place, but at least I can't shoot it at the French because it's retained. So we'll return that. There's even decoration on that stirrup, more foliage looking decoration. There's a nice flower on the cap of the rammer. You'd be used to this by now with the antique firearms you've seen on this channel. There's another swirl, frond if you like, on that patch box there. Even the screw, we've seen this again on others, but even the screw holding the grip in place there has a bit of decoration on it. So not in absolutely top condition, but in pretty good condition, to the point of the belt hook, the triggers, the screws, and originally the hammers, although they've seen more wear, would have been bright peacock blue. You can see enough of that on there, and then case hardening on the box lock, and on the barrels, as I say. Quite hefty, but quite pointable. A good sort of self-defense or traveling or belt pistol. What else in here, just to finish up? So bullet mold, which that says 24 on it for 24 bore. We've measured this at 20. That might not be original, but it's pretty close. And we also have a cleaning rod with different surfaces on there for getting a cleaning patch in there. May or may not be original. So the relevance here of the, or the extrapolation I'm going to make, I suppose, from this line about emigrants and different parts of the universe, is that Reilly himself was a first-generation immigrant to Britain from Ireland. He was born in Ireland in 1786, and by his early 20s he had moved to London. So we have a record of him marrying an English woman called Martha in 1814, and by 1816 he's trading as a jeweller in Holborn in London. He's not recorded as active as a gunmaker until 1831. He may have been active before then, but that's when we first get that in print, as it were. Making, well, the one thing he doesn't mention on his later trade label, pistols, rifles, which he does mention, but also shotguns, or just guns at that time. So he doesn't mention just smoothbore guns, shotguns, on the label, interestingly. I guess that was taken as read by then. But he definitely did make them because they still exist. Now, by 1831, when he's listed as a gunmaker, he's no longer listed as a jeweller or a silversmith. So it looks like he stopped doing that, albeit some of his guns will have had silver inlay or something on them. So he may have continued to use those skills. We then get a slightly complex history of him moving around that region of London, still the same area. So August 1835, so he's Joseph C. Reilly, C is his middle name, middle initial, I should say. So his son, Edward Michael Reilly, who is relevant to the later history of the company, they are recorded, or he's recorded as his apprentice, and they've moved to number 316 High Holborn. 1840, the advertising format changes from J.C. Reilly to just Reilly. So it's implied now to be a family business. He's still sort of in charge, but he and his probably no longer apprentice. So E.M. Reilly would have been 23. So chances are he's been elevated to, if not partner status, then a more equal status. And Joseph has dropped his own name from the company name. So that brings us to when this was made, which we've put at about 1845, give or take. So he would have been making this style of pistol by that time, when the company name changes. We do have the last thing to show you on the actual gun, which I've kept for this reason, is the maker's name on the top flat of the barrel, as it often is, which is Reilly, get this right, Reilly, New Oxford Street, London. Nicely engraved, as you will usually find it on top of the barrel there. And I failed to mention earlier, actually, that there is even more decoration around the muzzles of both barrels, albeit one of those bands of decoration is hidden by the stirrup of the captive rammer, but the top one is always visible. Actually, that's actually a good point. So, you know, just because that's going to be hidden by the stirrup of the rammer most of the time doesn't mean you don't take pride in your work and make those bits of decoration symmetrical. So, nice touch there, I think. Oh, because people will spot it and wonder, I also failed to mention this, rather. So a little tin of oil, and the oil is still in there. So again, not entirely sure that's original to the case, but it's period, I would say. Dixon and Sons, so some of you will recognise that maker of accessories. The last thing in the case that I didn't mention. Now, although we've said this is on our catalogue entry, about 1845, which is still not incorrect, but he moves to New Oxford Street in 1847. There's a record of that. So we may adjust the date to about 1847 because that's the address on the barrel there. So if he didn't move there till 1847, you can't say that this is from 1845. So that's just something that I've kind of fully realised in the process of recording. We'll go back and edit the record later on to make that more accurate. I think about 1845 was fair enough. So 1851 is the next significant date, the Great Exhibition, as a lot of you will have, or some of you will know about. A lot of the foremost gun makers in the land exhibited there, and some from elsewhere. And as E.M. Reilly, so Edward Michael, the former apprentice, now, well, beyond partner, he's now the main named Reilly in the company. They're exhibiting under his name. So Joseph actually retires from the business in 1857, and he has a few years in retirement before unfortunately dying in 1864. So he spent a good chunk of his life gun making at this point. But the company carries on as E.M. Reilly, I think I'm correct in saying, all the way until it finally winds up round about the mid 20th century. It's not one of the few, like Purdy or Holland and Holland, that have continued to the present day, unfortunately, but very few have. It disappeared, as many did, mid last century. Thanks for watching this episode, guys. We do appreciate it. Don't forget to do the usual YouTube stuff, like, subscribe, and if you're able to visit our bricks and mortar museums here in the UK, we've met a number of fans who've managed to make it over here from other countries, and we love it when you do that. If you are here in the UK, we have our summer programme going on. Notably, there's a Roman festival, and that's the August bank holiday, but keep an eye out on the website, on social media for anything else that's going on. That, of course, ties in with our Gladiators exhibition, which is underway here at Leeds. And if you're not making it up to Leeds, you can visit our museum at Fort Nelson, of course, and events going on there as well. And you can see our collection at the Tower of London. Also, if you'd like to check out the app and the website, History of Weapons and War, we are a part of that, along with a lot of other really good weapon-related YouTube creators who are also over there, usually offering you something additional to what they do on YouTube. So check that out if you're interested. Whatever you do, you'll see us here again next week.